Hi, everyone. Welcome to All Things Creative. I'm your host, Linda Riesenberg Fisler, and today we have Mandy Theis with us. Mandy, I have watched Mandy grow over the years, and when I say that, I don't mean like from a small child. I met Mandy, I guess, back in 2014. I think that's when I was at Track broadcasting live, so somewhere in there. But at that time, Mandy was attending an atelier, which we're going to talk about later, so I'll let her give you the background on that. And she was just about ready to graduate. We actually talked about her possibly coming to my little hometown of Middletown and to start an atelier here, but things didn't work out there. But I'm telling you, she took the right track, and I know that she's very happy with everything that she's doing now. And I'm really excited to bring Mandy to you all for her to talk about her art journey and what she's up to now, and the fact that we're both going to be presenting at Track here. So welcome, Mandy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's been such great fun watching you along your art journey, and I mean, it's not like I was bugging you every 10 minutes. I was kind of stalking you, I guess, more on Facebook and stuff. But
that's what Facebook is for.
Yeah, right. But it was kind of, it's just nice because I would see your name come up and the fun things that you've been doing. So let's start out with, you started as a certified kindergarten through 12th grade art teacher, and you're co-president of the Washington Art Education Association. So that I'm sure your art journey started way before that, like when you were in school. So wherever you want to start, just start to take us down this path that you've been on, because it's not an overnight success thing. This is putting in a lot of years and getting a lot of education and doing a lot of miles of canvas, if you will. So start us out. Tell us about your journey.
Sure. So I am a certified licensed art teacher, like you mentioned. I'm certified to teach kindergarten through 12th grade art, and I was teaching in a school in Montana. And one of my students really wanted to draw this picture of a guy flying through a cloud, right? Mm-hmm. And no matter how much I tried to help him, I just couldn't help him achieve the vision like the way he saw it in his head, right? So I started looking for help. He wanted to make it really realistic. I was looking for drawing classes every night, like scrambling, trying to help the student. And I stumbled upon Juliet Arcidi's book, Classical Drawing Atelier. And I couldn't believe when I found this book that all this knowledge and all these skills, you could go get them if you just trained in this magical place, right, called an atelier.
Right.
I really felt like someone was telling me I got to go to Hogwarts, right? Like if I just go to this magical place for 6 years, I can do what I'd always dreamed and wanted to do, and I didn't know was possible. So anyways, I learned about atelier training that way, and her books are very dangerous. I always recommend them, and I always say be careful, because I left my career and moved to Seattle to train with Juliet Arcidi by reading these books.
Right.
So I was studying with Juliet when I first met you at Track a few years back, and the interesting thing is that a lot of my art teacher friends were like, Mandy, how are you doing that? How did you where are you learning that? And so I started teaching my art teacher friends what I knew, and then their art teacher friends started contacting me. And the next thing you knew, I had essentially co-founded the DaVincii Initiative with Caroline Sandra Ross, who also runs the Art Renewal Center. And, it became its own nonprofit organization to support training art teachers in the public school and private school. We're not just public school. But any teacher working with students who are in the kindergarten through 12th grade range, we provide training and resources. We provide lesson plans. And, I really believe in investing in educators, because when we train an art teacher, we're training thousands of potential students and bringing knowledge to thousands of potential students.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really been great. So go ahead. I don't think you're finished yet, right?
Oh, well, so, I got the atelier training. I'm a painter myself. I've been exhibiting across the country. I was in the Legacy exhibit a year or so ago, and, I have an exhibit coming up as part of the Arcidi's alumni show at the Maryhill Art Museum.
Oh, nice.
And as you mentioned, I've been really involved in education as well. I'm actually now the former co-president of the Washington Art Education Association. I just finished up my tenure in October, so I get to call myself a former president now. But I'm very much involved in the art education world, and something I'd really like to communicate to people who are artists in the atelier world is just that art teachers love learning, and they're very interested in learning this. And as long as we present it to them in a way that's safe for them, that makes it safe for them to say, I don't know this already, but I'd like to learn, they're very eager to learn these skills and be a part of our community.
Yeah, that's it. Nobody likes to stop learning. I think that's all part of our creative nature is, that
Oh, yeah.
extension of getting the skills so that we can express ourselves correctly or not even correctly, but just express ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Well, and yeah, what I tell art teachers all the time is that I just want students to have the skills so that they can create the artwork that's in their head and their hearts, and that they should never have to compromise their
Mhm.
visions, right?
Right.
And so I see myself as giving them tools in their toolbox so that they can create and execute their visions without compromise.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I have one student. I teach at a little art center here in our town, and one of my students came in. I had actually, I had to chuckle when you said that about Juliet's books because I took Juliet's books into class, and we were kind of
Uh-huh.
looking through them and talking about different things. And the next week, my one of my students came back, and he had been talking to a former student of Daniel Graves, and
Ah.
yeah, and he comes walking in and he says, "You know what? I think I'm going to go study with Daniel." And I'm just kind of looked at him because I was like, I think Daniel's in Italy. And he goes, at last I thought, and he's like, yeah, I think he is too.
Sure.
So like we were like going on back and forth talking. I'm like, well, you do know that Juliet's in Seattle. And, and I'm thinking, well, if you want to go live in Italy, I can understand that. But it
Oh,
just,
sure. I mean, they're both great teachers,
exactly.
and wonderful promoters of Atelier knowledge.
Mm.
I really have a great respect for both of them.
Right. So it was really kind of interesting because like you said, he was the one that was really standing there studying Juliet's books and different things like that. And then he just happened to meet a former student of Daniel's and they had kind of the same
Sure,
conversations that we're having. So yeah, it
sure.
is contagious. So
Yes, well, and you
warning.
hit on something. Yeah, exactly. And you hit on something that's really important too, which is access to Atelier training. It's growing and
Hmm.
becoming more accessible, but it's still very limited. And so one thing the DaVinci Initiative, the nonprofit that I co-founded with Kara Ross, is really doing is trying to provide in-depth online classes through our YouTube channel. We have them available in our store so that people who are at home can get at least some access and training that's much more in depth than they would otherwise receive. So those classes have been wildly popular. I get people from all over the world sending me their bark plate drawings. We have a bark plate drawing class that's free on YouTube, and it's astonishing what people are actually able to achieve, with just some of the knowledge. I always advocate that people go train in person, but I do feel like we need to provide as much access to as much knowledge as we can. And these classes have been just huge. I get emails all over the world with people sending me their bark plates and asking me questions, and asking for help learning, which is so wonderful and exciting to me as an educator, to see
Right.
the engagement.
Yeah, that's great. So I know people are sitting there going, okay, now what's that email or what's that website, the YouTube account? So go ahead and tell them.
Sure. So we actually now run two websites. We have DaVinciInitiative.org, which is where all of our lesson plans and our online classes are. And we recently opened up a teaching studio in the New York City area in Jersey City. And the website for that is DaVinciInitiativeAtelier.org. So we have programs where we bring art teachers from all over the country. Actually, it's international now. And they come train in the summers when they have their time off from teaching. They come from Colorado and Kentucky and Idaho and everywhere. And it's really wonderful to have this group of dedicated art teachers. And then, they text me year round with what their programs are and what like the projects they're doing with their students. We also have a very close relationship with the Jersey City Public School District. They train with us multiple times a year. Actually, I have 21 of the 60 art teachers in the Jersey City Public School District training with me for the rest of the semester this year. So we have
Fantastic.
a whole school district completely engaged with integrating this training into their curriculum.
Great. So let's take a step back because we kind of jumped right into the DaVinci Institute. So
Oh,
tell us the mission.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Tell us the mission of the
Yes.
DaVinci Institute and just, I guess, the driving force that you and Kara did to set that up. You basically described already. So let's just talk about
Sure.
its mission, and then we'll get into a little bit deeper conversation about that.
Sure. So the DaVinci Initiative, we believe that all children should have access to knowledge and skills and we believe in Atelier training for contemporary classrooms. So we provide as much access as we can for teachers and students to access Atelier training. We connect them with ateliers. We promote all the ateliers that work with the Art Renewal Center and are recognized by the Art Renewal Center. We work with them to connect them with local art education communities and state art education associations. We write lesson plans to help teachers. We provide online classes. And our online class on YouTube, if you put in DaVinci Initiative into the YouTube search, educators can actually get college and graduate level credit for taking that class. And actually, you don't even have to be an educator. So anybody that needs an undergraduate or graduate level class, we have a partnership with the Heritage Institute where you can do a bark plate drawing and receive college credit for that, which is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're just building those relationships with the education community. I kind of view the DaVinci Initiative as a bridge between the Atelier community and the education community. I want to bring Atelier knowledge to the education community, and I want to help bring good teaching practice to the Atelier community.
Okay, that sounds great. I mean, like I said, I'm just sit here in awe of all your energy that you have and what you've been doing. So it's been so great. And it's kind of like my little hometown's lost to not have you here doing these things. But, like I said, it's really exciting to watch you and to see everything you've been up to. So let's go a little bit deeper. Let's start talking about like the skills that you teach and discuss. So I'm actually talking like the art skills and art technique and things like that. So go into that a little bit.
So one of the interesting challenges that I have working with K-12 educators in K-12 classrooms is that in an atelier, you have all day, every day, in theory, to work on your cast drawing or your bark plate, whereas art teachers in the classrooms have 45 minutes.
Right.
So how can we break down the information that you learn in Atelier into digestible chunks for 45-minute class periods when you have 30 to 40 students per class, because that's what most art educators are looking at in this country right now. So a lot of what we do that's been successful is take really complex ideas like draw a bark plate. Well, if you have 45 minutes, what's one concept on a bark plate that you can actually teach? So maybe the first lesson that we advocate for our teachers to teach when they're teaching bark plates is, let's find the height and the width of this bark plate, mark it on your page, and maybe find the envelope shape or 5 or 6 big straight lines to describe the overall shape of our subject. And that might be all they do in that period. And then the next period, it might be, let's look for some follow-through lines. And then the next period, it might be, let's try to find 3 shadow shapes, right? So we have to think really differently when we're working in the public school and private schools for that matter, about the pace of information, because they don't have the luxury of having their kids all day, every day. But there's no reason this knowledge can't be taught and integrated in the public schools. We just need to think about it in smaller pieces.
Great. Yeah. So for those of us who were never trained in an atelier, tell us what a bark plate is.
Oh, yes. So a bark plate, I love the history of bark plates because essentially Donald Jerome was commissioned to create a drawing course that was basically these plates that went out. They were lithographs, and the idea was that students would copy them, and by the time they got into his atelier, they would have a higher level of skill, or by the time they got to the École des Beaux-Arts, they would have a higher level skill in France, where he was based. And what's interesting is if you think about it, it really was one of the first national drawing curriculas ever created, which is amazing to think about today, especially because these plates were printed and shipped out to schools, all over throughout France. So it's really incredible to see that at some point in our history, of course, children could learn these skills, right? We tend to think that, that's too hard for children today. But in fact, 12-year-olds were expected to do that. There's a bark plate Picasso did as a child that is in the Prado Museum, right? So just because we aren't teaching this information to younger students right now doesn't mean that they aren't cognitively able to learn it. It's just that we have not been in the habit of teaching it at those ages. But anyways, back to a bark plate. It was basically a drawing curricula created it was conceptualized by Jerome, and then he commissioned Bark to do the lithography for it, and he was doing such a good job that he just let Bark take over the class, and now we know it more as the Bark drawing course.
Okay, so it's actually like you were talking before, you have your basic lines. Is it like I'm trying to, is it something similar to the rule of thirds or the golden mean? You have these different lines
Uh,
that are,
so really what it is they were drawings of casts. So
oh,
a bark plate, it was all these drawings of casts. And so you would copy the drawings of casts, and then you would progress the drawing from the cast directly. And it was a way, because when you work from 2D information to 2D information, it's an easier visual problem than going from a 3D cast to 2D information. But you have some skills developed from the 2D to 2D experience to go into the 3D to 2D experience.
okay. Now I'm following you. Sorry, I
Sorry.
wasn't Atelier trained, so I always find these.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, we live in such a visual world. I literally just pulled up a bark plate like in my hand while I was talking to you, and I'm like, oh yeah, you can't see this.
That's
This
right.
is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. We're only audio, unfortunately. So.
Yes. But if you would like to, just type into your favorite search engine bark plate, they'll come up and you'll see what they are.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. So then I assume that you're traveling a lot, or you were saying that some folks come to you, and naturally you're working out of Jersey
Hmm.
City as well, but you do travel to other
Right.
states to do this with education teachers
I do.
or an education teacher.
Um, Yeah, absolutely. So one thing is that every state has an art education association. And for the most part, teachers have to gather once a year at the Art Education Association conference in that state in order to get professional development credits to renew their licenses, right?
Okay.
So it's a great opportunity for anybody with Atelier training or who wants to connect with the art education community to go to these state conferences and present. They're always looking for artists to present and share what they know. So I would encourage your audience, anybody who's an artist that would like to, contribute to art education of our youth, please go to these conferences, submit a proposal to present a drawing class, even if it's just a demonstration. If you feel unsure about teaching a group of teachers, like just offer a demonstration and show what you know. Teach them a little vocabulary about atelier training, that it
Right.
exists. Most art teachers don't know what that word means. Just presenting and using that word would go a long way to helping shift the culture of art education towards a skill-based methodology.
Yeah, that's great. So, is there? I know that you are you connected in any way also with the Art Renewal Center, with other than just being
Oh,
a co-founder with
absolutely.
Kara? Yeah. So talk about that
Yeah.
association.
Okay. So we are actually the sister organization to the Art Renewal Center. The reason that we chose to make it a separate organization from the Art Renewal Center is because we're working, especially in public education, and because the Art Renewal Center has that wonderful library of paintings with many nude figures, which are quite beautiful. Unfortunately, right now in public education, that would prevent art teachers from going to that website.
Yeah.
So we made it a separate organization because of the issue of nudity that is currently perceived as inappropriate for public schools, which I hope to change that mentality also. But as of right now,
One thing at a
the
time.
Sistine Chapel even is a challenge to show in a public school system.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder about that. I just out of total off topics conversation. I was flagged in Patreon because I had one title on my Patreon page is "Let Me Entertain You."
Oh,
And they
geez.
deemed that somebody under 18 couldn't look at that. It was all very clean. I'm like, I'm not even
Oh
going to go.
my
I know. I'm not even going to go
goodness.
fight this.
Uh,
It's just like, forget
right,
it. All right. So
right.
I'm sort of thinking, I don't
Yes,
want to paint nudes. And now all of a sudden it has to be 15, or 18 and over for people to see my page. Whatever. Okay. So,
sure. I mean, I work with hundreds and probably over 1,000, thousands, I would feel comfortable saying, of adolescent children or young teenagers or young adults, right? And, we talk about like body image ideas, but we only ever let the advertising industry show the human figure, right? And
right.
because artists have not broadly taken up the human figure as a subject or let the human figure drop as a subject more or less for the last 100 years, the people most incentivized to create images of the human figure are incentivized to make them look in a way that you can only look if you buy XYZ product, right?
Right.
And even that is kind of a lie, right? When they Photoshop the figures and whatnot. So, I think it's quite a shame that figure drawing isn't a part of all curricula because in part, it shows the beauty in all the different types of figures. And I think it would do wonders for a lot of these kids who are really struggling with body image issues.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so much so. And one of the things that we're looking at the in my class, I have a drawing class that I teach, nowhere near the Atelier style, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really kind of interesting because a lot of them they always come in with beginner skills and they're like, I want to paint the figure, and I always look at them and go,
Mm-hmm.
I really would love to help you, but I haven't been trained in that. But I got some
Right.
books. Let's look through the books and see how we can do this.
Yeah.
So we might get brave, just,
Right.
and have a model come in and just see what kind of
Mm-hmm.
things we can do and maybe struggle along together. But, it is interesting that, we don't teach that. I mean, we can certainly in biology start, learning the names of the bones and the muscles and things like that. And that's all part of the
Mm-hmm.
Atelier training. You guys, you
Sure.
start with the bone structure and then the muscles that lay on top of that and the skin that lays on. I mean, there's this whole understanding of that, right?
Right. We call that écorché, yes. And it's certainly a part of some atelier training. Not all ateliers do that exercise, but many of them do. And it's a great way to understand the mechanics of the human figure,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
So,
um,
okay. So, on your art journey wise, is there anything else that we may have missed that you might want to talk about before we head into talking about track a little bit?
just that what I'd like to share is that drawing and painting at a highly technical level, it's not a magical thing. No one bops you on the head. There's no talent fairy. It's training with someone who has those skills. And because of the history of the last 100 years where this training fell out of favor, there are very relatively few places to get atelier skills. But if you connect with those places, and they're expanding all the time now because it's become the countercultural movement in art, ironically, if you find the ateliers, that's what you need to do in order to draw and paint at a highly skilled level. And so I would encourage anybody listening that has a desire to paint that way to not buy into this idea of, oh, if I don't have it already, I must not have it, whatever it is. The only thing that you don't have is access to someone with that knowledge already. So if you find those people, you too can draw and paint at the highest level.
Yeah. So let's step back a little bit and talk about, you said you had 6 years at Juliet's Atelier?
So I had 4 years at
4
Juliet's
years.
Atelier. I studied with Camille Corey for a year before I landed at Juliet's.
Okay.
I also spent a summer studying with D. Jeffrey Nims in North Carolina. And I most recently spent a year studying with Paul Ingertson in New Hampshire, although he just moved his atelier to Massachusetts, just outside of Boston in Lawrence.
Okay.
And he was a Gamble student who does a lot of work in color.
Okay. So take us through, let's just start with Juliet because Juliet's been on the program before and a lot of folks have heard her talk
Sure.
that are fans or listeners of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So talk
Sure.
us through your 4 years at Juliet's school. I mean, what was the first year like, the second year, the third year? What were you studying? That kind of conversation.
Sure. So the program at that time, and it's always evolving, but by the time I went through it, we did 1 year of drawing, mostly in charcoal, and that was the first year. So we would draw from the figure every morning. We would do cast drawings and bark plate copies and still life drawings in the afternoon. And then the second year, we would paint in grisaille, which means painting in black and white. So we would take all of our drawing skills, but it turns out it's way more difficult to manipulate paint at the same level as charcoal. So in theory, we were using the same concepts, right? Like how light, how dark something is, but trying to figure out how to handle paint and control paint is its own skill, right?
Right.
And then by the third year, we would do what we called warm cool studies. So we would use a very, very limited palette. Mostly for still life, we would paint white objects with an ultramarine blue, a burnt sienna, and a white, and that's it. And, look and see how things shifted from warm to cool and use the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue to show the shifts from warm to cool. So we'd set up these white objects and we put orange on the reflected light side and blue on the light side. And so that would kind of purposely cool the lights and warm the shadows to help us see those oranges and those blues.
Interesting.
And then towards the end of that year, we would slowly add colors onto our palette. So, yellow would be added and, slowly expanding the palette until we were in the full color palette. And then our fourth year, again, each of these years we're painting from the figure all morning and the life and master copies in the afternoon. So in the fourth year, you'd be, progressing into your full palette and painting still life objects. You're expected to do a senior thesis, so you would work with Juliet to come up with an idea for a painting series for your senior thesis or your graduation projects.
Yeah.
So,
And so you were spending at least 8 hours a day just totally immersed in learning and creating.
Yes. Yes. Technically, the school day was 6 hours a day, but you have to get there a half hour to an hour early to get everything ready to go, and then you're always there late. And then on top of that, there were lectures in the evening and extra workshops you would take in the weekends. So it was very immersive.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then graduation day comes. And I'm assuming, yay! and I
like
assume,
I look back on those 4 years and it was a blur. Like, I remember learning so many things and I'm so grateful, but like it's hard for me to remember specifically what happened during those 4 years.
Right. Well, and that the certain part of your mind probably just everything else that's going on in the world just kind of shut off because you were in that environment that,
Sure.
so intensive and.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure there were. I'm assuming that there was some kind of grading scale or something that went on, a review process.
Yeah, there would be reviews. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, if you were there and you were working, you were fine. Some people would come into the program and think that Atelier training was for them, but then kind of peter out and stop showing up to class, and those people tended to not be invited back for the next year.
Right.
To continue training. But it really is what we would call saddle time. If you get your butt in front of your easel every day and you work no matter how hard it is that day, because, it's an emotional journey to really train at that level. If you think about the stories about classical ballet conservatories or classical music conservatories, like this is up there.
Right.
So, you're with people that are all used to being the best at art of anybody they know. You're all working towards the same goal. You see someone else progress faster than you are and you feel demoralized about it. It's as much of an emotional strength exercise as it is learning the skills.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine, and I can only imagine. So, but yeah, that's really interesting. So, let's go forward a little bit, and like I said, you and I met back at the Representational Art Conference and I think that was either the first or second year that they kicked that off. Might have been the second year.
Yeah, I believe it was the second
Yeah,
year.
and you actually came on and talked a little bit about attending the conference as a student, and how fun that was when we were broadcasting live. So not your first time to the show, but
Indeed, that was great fun.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I'll never forget when Roger Scruton came in and I actually got a chance to interview him. That was pretty cool. So
absolutely, yeah.
So have you gone every year?
I haven't made it every single year, but I have been to a few of them. So when they partnered at Miami, I was there. I was at the it wasn't Amsterdam, but the city north of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I know I'm going to butcher the name. It starts with an L, Holden.
Yeah, just close.
But yeah,
close enough.
I apologize to all your viewers right now for my incompetence.
Yeah,
at pronouncing Dutch names.
Yeah, I would be the same way. So yeah, our apologies.
Yes. So that was a great conference as well, and really connecting. The Atelier community is much bigger than I even realized, and so many great artists doing so many cool things. And the fact that we have these conferences now, like it's incredible, like how quickly the Atelier movement is growing, and all the interesting, amazing works that are being created because people have access to this knowledge more broadly than they've ever had access to it before in the last 100 years. And it makes me so excited to be a part of seeing the growth of skills in the contemporary world.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too because when track first started out, you really, Michael Pierce, who is one of the founders of the conference, would always say, on the show and everything with, we're in the middle of a representational revolution, and, and it's starting to come back, and all this. And I would be like the pessimistic one sitting on the other side of the microphone going, yeah, right. Okay, Michael, but,
Mhm.
bless his heart. We really are starting to see this, and it really
Oh my
is
goodness, yeah.
with the Atelier training and all of
Mhm.
the more structure and your efforts in education. I mean, this is starting to have some roots in a resurgence that I'm very happy to see. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And what's
maybe
interesting to
South.
me is that I really believe that we have to know what's known about our profession in order to be truly progressive and innovative within it.
Yes.
So, I find it wonderful that we are accessing knowledge about what's already known about art for the first time in 100 years, or,
Hmm.
that's been hard to come by over the
Hmm.
last century, and really progressing forward and beyond, with our subject matter and, how we're using these skills, so I tend not to think of it as going back. I tend to think of it as finally being able to progress beyond anywhere we've ever been before.
Right. Yeah. Good way to look at it. And so, is this going to be your first time presenting at track then?
So I presented at the last couple track.
Okay.
So I share, what my organization is doing. There's a lot of people in the Atelier community that want to help and be a part of this change, particularly in K-12 education. So I provide training and knowledge and access to those people and how they can connect with art teachers and share their skills with art teachers.
Cool. So I'm going to talk about, can we talk, I should ask this first, I guess. Can we talk about what you're going to
Mhm.
present this year? Because
Sure,
this,
absolutely.
okay, great. So the title of your paper is You Say You Want a Revolution. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us why you're going to take us down that track. Ha, cute.
Sure.
How's that
So,
cute?
uh, basically the premise is that I hear a lot in the community, oh, I wish I could do something, or, sometimes we get frustrated because, we try one tack and it doesn't work to, push atelier training forward in some capacity or another.
Hmm.
And basically what my paper is saying is that we need to make a concerted effort, not just this one person doing this other person doing that. We need to create a plan that we're all executing together in a collective push in order to make the change that we would like to see in how art is taught and how art is accepted into galleries and with power brokers in the art world and things like that.
Mm.
So it's basically a list of to-dos and how to achieve them and how everybody can participate and help educate. And that education is really a huge piece of it. I think sometimes in our world, we feel like people are against us before we even talk about it, right? So,
Yep.
but if you start with that, if you go into conversations with your dukes up, then people are suspicious, like, what are you hiding, right? But if you go into your conversations with the assumption of course this makes sense, of course skills are an important part of creating artwork, and also sometimes in our world, there's a lot of feeling like we have to talk badly about skill-less art or modern art, art that doesn't emphasize skills, that emphasizes idea or process. And I basically promote that that's not even something that we have to address. Like, why create a battle that we have to win before anybody will listen to why skills are good? We don't have to prove anything else is bad, only that skilled work is valid and good. And so by going into these conversations with stakeholders and people with power in the art world, with this idea that, of course, this is the most reasonable thing ever, that skills belong in art, and not, creating a contentious dialogue leading into it. We don't even have to address that. It's not even a part of the conversation. All we have to do is show that skills are important and good.
Yeah, that's it. It takes so much energy in the convention part. Yeah, you get where I'm going with this. I mean, there's so much
Yes.
energy that is spent, disproving something or
Mhm.
taking a particular stance that by
Mhm.
the time that you so-called win the argument, if you win the argument, because it can go on for who knows eternity, there's like no
Sure.
energy left to do,
Mhm.
to like celebrate after the victory or or say that you were right
Right.
or whatever. I mean, so yeah, so
Mhm.
keep that energy out of it and just, go right into to the creation part and the skills needed to do that creation. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and just keeping it that simple of a message and unifying that message across the board. Sometimes in the Atelier community, we have a hard time even agreeing on what we're called, right?
Right.
Like, are we classical realists? Are we realists? And, everybody has a strong opinion with good reasons for that strong opinion. But, why don't we just decide what we care about and collectively push for that? Like, I don't even care what it's called. Let's just move forward and, with a plan that we're collectively executing to educate the populace, because it is, maybe it's because my background's in education, but to me, I see, everything through the lens of education. And what we have is a population that is not aware that we even exist, right? That don't even think that realistic artwork can happen in today's world, right? Because most of them haven't seen it happen or know how it happens, or they've been taught at some point in their lives that, oh, you either have it or you don't, so it can only happen if you get bopped on the head by a talent fairy. So there's a lot of misinformation that is popular right now, and we need to educate in a non-confrontational way how skills are learned and taught, why they're good to, for contemporary art being made, that skills are one of many ways to communicate visually, and that they're important for artists and non-artists for that matter. I think about how, people who see more colors than you can teach you to see colors you've never seen before.
Right.
That's amazing, right? And if you go to any atelier and start painting, that's one of the first things you realize is, oh my gosh, I never saw that color before until you pointed it out, but now I see it, right?
Yeah.
How many scientists are missing really important scientific discoveries in their petri dishes because they don't see that color shift, right? How many surgeons are making bad cuts because they don't understand what the living figure looks like because they train on cadavers, right? So it's not just for artists that we need skills in art. It's a visual language that can benefit everybody, and we're depriving every profession and every human being when we deprive them of what's known about visual literacy.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I was thinking back on is when I was young and attending like second, third, fourth grade, something like that. I went to a Catholic school, and when I think about art class at that time, it was, okay, sit down, take your crayons out, draw a tree or paint, color a tree, or there wasn't, I mean, all through my primary education, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on learning the skills of art. It was, I guess you could say when I was little, it was on the path of people believing that art wasn't an essential thing to teach. And I think we're still in part of that, but thanks to you, we're, hopefully getting that message out that it is essential for the very reasons that you just stated, all the different professions that it could touch if they were taught to see differently.
Sure. I mean, we have entire conversations in emojis, and yet we know less as a society about how our eye sees imagery than 100 years ago.
Right.
We have access to the internet. We have more knowledge on more subjects than ever before in human history, and yet somehow we know less about understanding what our eye is seeing because we've stopped sharing this training and knowledge.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting because I have adult students who basically were learning at this, around the same time that I was, and they'll be looking at something that they want to paint, and they have to figure out some, the math that is involved in it, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, see, don't you wish that you were, don't you wish that we had better art classes when we were younger?
Right.
But I mean, it's just there. It touches on so many disciplines, and
for people to be
so dismissive of, our kids they don't need art, and it's like, yeah, they do. They really do on a number of different levels.
Yeah. I would argue a part of the reason art has gone by the wayside, particularly in public education, is that the music teachers, they have kids that don't know how to hold an instrument at the beginning of the year, and then they can play a concert at the end of the year. And parents, administrators, stakeholders, they all see the growth in knowledge and skill in the students. But because skill has been de-emphasized in art education in favor of process or this cloud of what's often called creativity, but that nobody can define the same way, they come out of class with some paint splattered on canvas maybe, or some sort of exploratory process-based thing where they melt crayons together to make a new crayon. But it's hard for parents, it's hard for anybody outside of this feedback loop in education to understand or see or value the growth that's happening there. Now, I'm not anti-exploratory concepts and art or anything like that. It's just that, all other fields like have a contemporary and classical tradition, right? We have garage bands in music, and we have classical music. We have classical ballet, and we have, conceptual modern dance, right? And art, for some reason, is the only one that eschews the known skills in our field, which seems insane to me. Like I cannot support purposely withholding knowledge from children because we're afraid of ruining their creativity. I think that's criminal.
Hmm. So did you run into someone who was challenging in that? Or
I mean, I have to be very careful when I'm speaking because there are a lot of really wonderful art teachers. I love all the art teachers I work with, actually. But the way art teachers are trained at universities to be art teachers and the way the profession generally supports art education is by really emphasizing process, emphasizing creativity-based lessons. And it's not that I think those things are bad. I think creativity is very important. It just, unfortunately, they aren't able to see how having skills is also a creative choice, right?
Right.
And that it gives you more choices to be creative. Because most art teachers, including myself, I was teaching in the classroom without access to this knowledge. It can be intimidating to try to learn these skills once gone through the college experience, right? And we've been teaching in classroom for quite some time. So I have so much admiration and respect for teachers who are coming to train with me and going to ateliers and willing to learn these skills because they value education.
Cool. So yeah, so interesting. So we've been chatting for about 45 minutes, and I've kind of gone through my list of questions and was wondering if there's anything else you want to add, Mandy. So I think
I would just like to I'd just like to add that anybody, that would like to support seeing the change in seeing a sea change in culture where skills are valued again, I would encourage you to reach out to your state's Art Education Association. So if you're in Colorado, look for Colorado Art Education Association. If you're in New Hampshire, look for New Hampshire Art Education Association, and offer to teach a workshop or connect with them. And share, you can support us by donating to the DaVinci Initiative. So if you feel that what we're doing is important, I would be so honored if you would show that with a donation that allows us to do this really important work with teachers across the country.
Cool. And once again, say the two different web addresses that you talked about earlier.
Sure. So you can make donations at www.davinciinitiative.org. And you can look up at our in-person training workshops, our summer workshops, and our after-school programs for teachers at DaVinciInitiativeAtelier.org.
Okay. So, I had a question and that just went completely out of my mind. So, I hate when that happens. But okay, I think we pretty much covered a lot of stuff here, and your journey continues. I look forward to seeing you next week at Track. So,
I look forward to seeing you too. Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, week after. I think it starts the 31st and goes through the 4th or 5th. I can't remember right offhand. I think it's the 4th, April 4th. It's in Ventura, California. Mandy and I are going to be there and presenting papers. And I think I'm on Monday, and I think you're on the 4th. Is that correct?
I believe so, but I need to double check that.
Yeah, I got the website up. I can look right here. Yeah, day 4. So April 3rd. April 3rd. So if anybody out there that's listening to us, if you're going to be at Track, please stop in and cheer us on in our paper presentations and
say hello.
Yes, absolutely. Say hello. And who knows who's going to be hanging around the bar out there. But a bunch of us probably all talking about everything that comes under Track. But it'll look good. And Mandy, again, thank you for coming on to the show and talking about your passion and your journey. It was wonderful to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So everybody tune in again soon. I think I don't have an artist lined up for next month, but I do have a writer and lined up for next month. So more about that in my newsletter. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.